All right, I know it's like a celebration mood with everybody here today. There's going to be an awful lot of opportunities in this city for Detroit contractors, for Detroit workers in the building trades. But we're going to start off today with an announcement we had scheduled already with the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights. It has been an enormous frustration for a lot of us over the years. The lack of opportunity in the building trades for men and women of color, particularly for African Americans. And Mayor Coleman Young attempted to deal with it with an executive order, but for several decades, most of the building construction done in this region was being done in the suburbs. Detroit had relatively little leverage in demanding that the trades be opened up. In the last 5 or 6 years, as we've seen huge construction in the city, Charity Dean and our Department of Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunity has been very successful in getting increases in participation, particularly in the apprenticeship programs for Detroiters. But there's one group that we never had to pressure, and that's the carpenters and millwrights. First under the leadership of President Mike Jackson, and now under the leadership of President Tom Lutz. Not only have the carpenters and millwrights actively recruited new members of color, but they have made a statement that went beyond just recruiting, just outreach programs. And I'm going to show you some pictures right now, and then I'm going to let President Lutz talk about himself. But we stood together a year ago when they announced that this year they would break ground on a $30 million training facility in the city of Detroit. Think about that as a statement. They are so committed to Detroiters pursuing careers as carpenters and millwrights, they opened and built their training center here. They promised a year ago they'd break ground this year. They did, and that's what we're here to celebrate. They've recently broken ground. You can go out there. I was out there earlier today, a lot of dirt being moved, and they're going to open next year. And I'm going to show a few of the pictures, and then I'm going to let Tom Lutz talk to you about it. But it's in a neighborhood that needed some development. This is the old Tappan School site off of 96 near Livernois. Vacant lot. It didn't look quite this nice before we made this picture, but it was another abandoned site. They've got 5 different regional facilities. And they came forward and said, let's do one world-class facility. Let's do it in the city. And they came and said, can you give us a visible site people can get to from across the region? And we gave them a site right off the I-96 exit where it's visible and accessible to people from across the region. 1,500 apprentices, students are going to be paid. And this is the great thing about the building trades. You get paid as you learn. Unlike other places where you pay tuition while you learn, this is an opportunity for you to get paid. 1,500 people a day, and we want as many Detroiters as possible. If you just look at what's going on for the next decade, there is no doubt the vast majority of construction in Michigan is going to be going on in the city of Detroit. Now, Dan Gilbert's out of the ground with the cranes at Hudson's, but if you look at what Bill Ford is doing over at the trade station, what FCA is doing over on Mack Avenue, you look at what's happening with the Gordie Howe Bridge. One project after another, and with yesterday's action by Detroit City Council, we're going to have 8,000 houses in neighborhoods being renovated, which means the demand for people to be able to make these kinds of repairs and these kinds of skills is enormous, and there's going to be a need for these 1,500 students. And so what you have now is 147,000 square foot facilities being built, and I'll let Tom Lutz talk about what's going to be there. But if you go out to the site right now, out there on Elmhurst and 96, you will see the work being done, the construction underway, and next year it's going to open. This is something that I think many of us could only have dreamed of. A huge building trades training center located in the city of Detroit, trying to attract Detroiters. And with that, I want to turn it over to the man who made it possible, the president of the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights, Tom Lutz. Tom?
So I would like to thank Mayor Duggan personally. I remember when we were talking about building this school, and I remember Mayor Duggan getting in a bus with our leadership team and driving around this city until we found the perfect location to build this future training center. And to be honest, that's just not the kind of commitment, right, to skilled trades training and good careers that we see out of elected officials every day. So I want to thank you, because I believe that you and the support of the Detroit City Council is actually why this is happening. And we appreciate that and we respect that. It's also extremely important that people recognize that it's the partnerships. We couldn't get this done without our contracting partners. These are Michigan companies that invest dollars that they fight hard to get in contracts, and they invest them back in our communities in these types of training centers. Now, this type of training center, I believe, is actually a great model that can show us what partnerships can lead to in quality investments in our own communities. And this investment, it'll change lives. It'll absolutely change people's lives. It doesn't matter if you're an adult and you're looking for a path to a career change, or you're a recent high school graduate that's looking to build a career in the building trades, or maybe, just maybe, you're a young person who isn't convinced what they want to do and you want to further explore carpentry or the mysterious field of millwrights, or mill cabinet, or floor covering, or pile drivers, or any of the other crafts that we represent in our training centers. It will be an opportunity to people of all ages and of all skill levels. It is just super important to recognize that at that school, in that 147,000 square feet that he talked about, over 125,000 of it will be committed to things like high bay training areas, flooring manipulations, and a 30-booth weld center so that we can continue to build the infrastructure that we so need, not just in this city, but around southeastern Michigan. And that's where we can do those things. And the classrooms will be filled with smart boards and the technology to empower these people. Because the reality of it is that we need to build more than just hands-on skills. And make no mistake that when you train to be the best, you learn more than just the hard skills that you need for carpentry or millwrights or pile drivers. We teach things like leadership and integrity. And we teach the soft skills that turn these jobs into careers, because make no mistake, in the building trades and with a commitment like you're seeing before you, we don't train for jobs, we train for lifelong careers. And the difference in our programs is that you get the opportunity to start without debt, that you get paid, and our companies are investing in you and in our communities from the day you step on a job site and the day you walk through that door. And the men and women that walk out that door will be the best trained that the construction industry has ever seen. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to one of those apprentices here with us today. Born and raised, educated right in the city of Detroit, a proud third-year carpenter apprenticeship in our program right now. Lawrence Hunt Jr. has already been a part of rebuilding Detroit. I can't tell you how proud I am that he is going to be on our site right there in the city, getting paid to build the future in the city of Detroit with the skills that he learned on jobs and in our apprenticeship training centers. And I believe that this is going to change people's lives in the city of Detroit as we provide the opportunities they're due. It's here because this is where we're building, and it's on the streets where the people live that need to be doing that building. So I'm super proud. I hope you'll help me welcome Lawrence Hunt Jr.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I want to thank Mayor Mike Duggan for giving me the opportunity to be here today and to speak in front of you guys. To introduce myself, my name is Lawrence Hunt Jr. I am currently a member of the Carpenters Union, Local 687 in Detroit, and I am a third-year Carpenter's Apprentice right now, going on my fourth year. And I'm happy to announce that I will be a part of the $30 million state-of-the-art school that's being built as we speak today. I will be a part of that in a few weeks. Very happy I'm very proud, I'm very honored to be a part of that. A little bit about myself. Prior to becoming a carpenter, I went to a high school called Detroit Crystal Ray in Southwest Detroit. And they had a very special corporate work study program that allowed every single student to have a job. You know, we went to that job once a week, and I happened to work at a place called Masco Corporation. And I believe when I was a senior, they actually asked me the question, Lawrence, what do you want to do when you graduate? And I didn't really, at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, I told them, basically, I want to work with my hands. I've always been a really impulsive type of guy. I always moved around a lot. I wanted to be active. And so I wasn't really sure about what unions were. I wasn't sure about what the skilled trades were. So when I told them that, a few months later, they actually helped me, and they set me up with Barton Malo. That was in January 2017. And when I did an interview with them, they asked me, you know, do you want to be a carpenter, a pipe fitter, a laborer, electrician? And I did some more research on carpenters, and you know, I decided that that's what I really wanted to be. That's really what I wanted to pursue. And in March 2017, I got hired at the Little Caesars Arena, Midtown Detroit. And I was only 18 years old back then. I'm 21 years old today. So being that young and being a part of something so special, you know, words can't even describe it. I felt like I was actually helping build my community, being a native Detroiter, being born in Detroit my whole life. You know, I felt like I played a role in building up the community. A little bit after that, I worked on a site called Flexingate on the east side of Detroit, around the Van Dyke and 94 area. And when I did that project, I felt even more honored because it wasn't in downtown Detroit. It was kind of on the east side. And I know once we finished that project and once it was completely built, that job has empowered hundreds of Detroiters and gave them jobs and, you know, high-paying jobs. And again, I felt very honored to be a part of that. I have a lot of friends that, you know, they say, I get to work downtown Detroit. I'm working for Detroit companies, but I tell them, I built Detroit. You know, I'm I'm on a little different level. I get to actually build Detroit with my own hands. And that's a very, very special feeling, being able to say that at only 21 years old, like I said. So let me talk to you guys a little bit about the apprenticeship right now. Like I said, I am a third-year carpenter's apprentice. Like the mayor said earlier, you know, we get paid to learn. So I literally go to school this Friday. In 2 days, I'm going to get paid just like I got paid today, just like I got paid yesterday, to actually go to school and learn, which is really important because not a lot of places do that. You know, you graduate debt-free. You don't even have to pay for your books, or no tuition at all. So that's really special. Aside from that, you know, the curriculum is really, really good too. You know, we have even classes that you don't really think about when you associate it with carpentry, like welding, scaffold building, classes like that, level and transit. But, you know, like I said, we do have those classes too. And I've taken a lot of classes so far, and I feel really honored about that. Very happy to say that. And like I said, I will be on the new school, and that makes me even more excited and happy. And like I said, words can't really describe how I feel about it because I know that I'm in a strong union. I know that even when I started 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about carpentry. I never swung a hammer. I never used a tape measure. I never used a speed square, a framing square, a chalk line, cat's paw. I can name all the tools, even the power tools. I never used any of them. But my first day there, I worked with guys who were willing to teach me and willing to show me everything that I needed to know to, you know, get the job done. Because the number one priority is safety. But after that, you look at doing the job efficiently, you know, and in order to do the job efficiently, you're going to have a guy, if you're working with an apprentice like me, you're going to have to show him what to do and how to do it to make his life even easier and to make the job go by faster and get everything done in time. So I just want people to know that even if you don't know how to do the job, even if you've never done carpentry before, it's okay, because you're going to have guys that'll be happy to teach you and happy, to show you how everything works. And right now we need we need carpenters in this city. So hopefully I'm a testament to the people out there watching today. It's very real, and like I said, I'm very happy to be a part of this at only 21 years old. So that's pretty much all I have to say today. Thank you, guys.
Great job, Lawrence. All I have to say is I'm listening to you tell your story about starting out at the Masco Corporation, which of course is the company started and built by the Mohican, and listening to the way that you spoke, 21 years old, I'm thinking there could be another building associated with the Mohican somewhere in your future. Just hope it's not too soon. But this is the kind of city we want to build, where it's Detroiters rebuilding. And so we're going to take questions right now on the new Carpenters building, and then we're going to wrap that up, and then we'll bring up the folks who want to talk about Proposal N. And here's a man amazingly familiar with the Mohican. ML.
Yes, I think there was something about a party there that didn't happen, but
You and I are the only two who know it didn't happen.
well, I heard we were throwing the party, so
Right,
I don't
there you
know.
go.
That's what they say, but there's no evidence, so we'll stick with that. And I think I may know some people who went to high school with Mr. Hunt there at Cristo Rey. So I wanted to ask Mr. Hunt, with first question about how you got accepted for the apprenticeship program, and just because of the way the journalism thing's going, what does it pay?
Well, like I said, I got accepted from, Masco did a lot of business with Barton Malo, so they pretty much hooked me right up there, and I did an interview with them. And I guess the process to it is they sponsored me, and after they sponsored me, I went to the school and showed my proof of sponsorship. So I started my classes immediately, and then I actually got to the job site and started working there. And currently, I think the pay for first-year apprentices is at $18 an hour, maybe even a little bit higher. When I started 3 years ago, it was $17, $14, I believe, and journeyman wage is $34 an hour.
Okay.
So it does pay. It does pay.
And where are you taking classes right now?
Right now, I'm taking classes in Ferndale.
In Ferndale. Okay,
Ferndale
so in
School.
terms of going to school, is this going to be more convenient, or is it pretty much more or less same distance for you to go?
It'll probably be 10, 15 minutes closer in Detroit if I do end up going there, because like I said, I'm a third-year apprentice. So by the time the school is built, I might have already graduated. Hopefully, I don't, because I really do want to check the school out. And like I said, it would be a little bit closer. And if I have the opportunity, I definitely will transfer to that school.
Okay. And for Mr. Lutz, where are the 5 campuses you have now, and what's going to happen to them? Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Well, thank you. So the campuses that will be relocated to the Detroit facility include our Warren Millwright Technical Training Center, our Ferndale Carpenter and Resilient Flooring Training Center. But as the mayor mentioned, we're really committed to this. And so I have Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters executive offices in the Rensen, which we will be moving to that facility in Detroit. Well, not that the Rensen's not Detroit. They will be joining us there. I also have a hub where I have business agents and representatives that represent the majority of southeastern Michigan, currently located in Livonia, and we will be moving them here to this new facility. In addition to that, I have a facility on Mound Road, which currently serves as a union hall and representation office, the majority of which my staff will also be moving. One of the interesting things that's going to happen at this school is that because we're combining the union representation back in with the apprenticeship school, we create that network that job network that's so important when, in construction, we're always working ourselves out of a job. We're proud to do that. But it's really nice to have that network where I leave apprenticeship school, where I maybe just got done with the job. I can walk next door, see my business agent, and help get referred to the next one. So that'll help us a lot. But one of the other great things is, because we have a huge space there, we'll make it available to job fairs. I mentioned the summer camps earlier, but to job fairs and other community training stuff that'll happen. So we actually intend to expand, put our marketing network there as well. So.
Okay, and the wages for the students, is $18 about right, and it graduates year by year?
Yeah, so for commercial carpenter, he pretty much nailed it, absolutely, what he started at and where he's at today. I have a lot of different craft jurisdictions, as I mentioned, millwrights, who are pretty comparable. A little bit higher on the in scale, around the same on the entry scale. I have resilient floor decorators, which just by numbers and industry is a little bit lower, but extremely consistent work. And then I have things like manufacturing with mill cabinet and display industry. We're proud. We built that auto show here for decades and decades, and we're excited for the move, by the way, for more opportunities to build more. But we also train the men and women that build that show that travels around the world. And so their scale's a little bit different. But unlike a carpenter who might have a rain day or inconsistency in work, sometimes they're very consistent. And so with the steady hours comes a little bit of reduction in pay. But it's fair to say that most apprentices start out around 15 and end north of the $30 range on the wages. Maybe more important is to recognize that these are careers. And with careers and living wages, we need things like benefits. So it's not just the contractors and our commitment to this investment in training, but it's investment that they provide in medical benefits and things like annuities and things that's going away in the world and we should worry about, things like defined benefits, which allow working men and women like Lawrence to go home at the end of a long career, an honorable career, in an honorable way. So we're proud of that, but don't just consider the wage. Think of the education, the flexibility as the market moves around, and how you'll get to the end of your career, which we want to be a part of.
So that does come with benefits then?
Absolutely.
Okay. And in terms of gaining admission, do you need to be sponsored by a contractor? Can somebody just off the street walk in and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, where do I apply?
So my Department of Labor standards, which by the way, we're Department of Labor accredited. You should look for that anytime you're looking for someone that has an apprentice. Make sure that they're in an accredited training program. That's one way to keep the industry honest. And with that comes standards. So my standards say that you have to be a high school graduate or GED holder. You do not have to be sponsored. As a matter of fact, much of the work that we do with city residents is to get them pre-trained. Pre-train them on the math, pre-train them on prints, pre-train them on OSHA 30, so they're job ready. That's how you meet the industry's needs, and that's what we're doing with people that might not have had a sponsor to start with. So no, it's not a requirement. But after you've met those requirements, there's a math test, because there's a lot of math that you'll need to be able to do our trade successfully. Once you've reached that, and make no mistake, if you don't reach it the first time, we will train you until you do. We will help you get there. It's construction math. It's the kind of math that lets young people who struggle with math know why they're doing the math. And that's a big difference. But we'll get them there. Once that math is done, there's an interview process, and you're selected, you're taken into an entry class. So it is not a requirement to be sponsored to become an apprentice.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, regarding this piece of property, what was there before it was presented to the carpenters and millwrights?
At one point was the Tappan School. So I'm going to say in 2014, there were a huge number of abandoned Detroit public school sites. And the Detroit public schools were way behind in paying a lot of their bills. And so we made a deal with DPS. We forgave the outstanding bills in exchange for about 77 sites they turned over to us. This is one of the 77, and this is the value of it, is that, as Tom points out, I really wanted this training center in Detroit, and we put people in the bus and we drove them around. But to have this site owned by the city, free and clear, with the freeway access ready to go, they needed international union approval for this. If we did not have that kind of site under control, might well have gone somewhere else. So this is the old Tappan School, and will now be a different education site.
And is that school still standing, or was that
No,
raised?
no, it had been raised.
So this is
There's probably
clear
somebody
piece
in the
of
room who knows when Tappan was raised, but it's been a while.
And was this land sold to the carpenters and millwrights, or was it given?
Yeah, we made them a good deal. I don't remember the terms of it, but we made them a good deal. We can get you the details on it.
Okay,
We announced those last year.
And will this property be taxable? Subject to property tax?
Yeah, we need to ask, you know, the tax lawyers. I don't know whether it's a nonprofit that owns it or what the story is.
It's a long-term land lease.
A long-term land lease, so I guess the city still owns it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions about the Carpenters project? All right, so Tom and Lawrence, you're welcome to stay and join us, but at this point, I'd like to invite the Proposal N folks to come up. And I know Councilman Benson's here with some of his constituents. Brian McKinney's here with a number of the contractors. Of course, Arthur Jemison and Conrad Mallett and Nicole Sherrod-Freeman, who had so much to do with yesterday's vote. So why don't you guys just kind of space out up here? And we'll get a chance to talk about what happened yesterday, and it's something that I have never seen. For as long as I can remember, you had contractors in the city always complaining, why can't we get more city business? The city bureaucracy is too complicated. This thing didn't work out, that thing didn't work out. In the last 2 or 3 years, we have dramatically overhauled the city procurement process, and our procurement director, Boise Jackson, has done a great job. And now the vast majority of both rehab and demolition work that's being contracted by the city of Detroit is going to Detroit companies. But we had something happen this week that I have never seen. This turned out not to be a request of the mayor to the city council. There were 20 Detroit contractors, nearly every one of them black-owned, who stood up and said, this is an opportunity for Detroit companies to succeed. We're in the middle of a recession now. A $250 million investment in the neighborhoods of Detroit can be a huge investment in our companies, and we are hiring Detroiters. Detroit companies employing Detroiters to improve Detroit neighborhoods. And so I'm going to ask now one of the leaders of this group, and I think reflective of the entrepreneurs that we see playing such a central part in rebuilding our city, to talk about the fact that this is their proposal. This was really the Detroit contractors' proposal, and I know they'll be expressing their opinions as we head toward November 3rd. But please welcome the president of Guyanga, Brian McKinney.
Thank you, Mayor Duggan, for having us here. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Conrad Mallett, and I want to thank City Council for yesterday's vote and allowing the residents of the city to be voted in November, specifically around Proposal N. And the mayor is correct. We sat down very early as a group and decided after the bond failed last time that one thing that we didn't feel we did enough of was communicate what this would impact, how this would impact the neighborhoods, more importantly, how it would impact our ability to create jobs. We think that along the way, the narrative was lost on how many jobs in the neighborhood. As a union contractor, so I can speak directly to the wages that we provide, and I know all about it. It's not just the wage, it is definitely the benefits. You have to pay it. And so being able to provide people access to jobs that allow them not only to work, but to go to the doctor, their children to go to the doctor, their spouse or partner to go to the doctor, to go to training, to be able to advance their craft. Even after they finish their journeyman program, they can actually go back and get advanced training as technology changes, as the work changes. And so we were really excited to be able to make an impact in doing that in the city of Detroit. But most importantly, I can't say how many times we have residents that come up to these sites and they speak and say, how can I get this job? How did you get to do this? And so this opportunity to do this work with Proposal N ensures that no matter how the pandemic impacts the rest of our economy, that there is work. And one of the things that we're most proud of as a contractor team was that there was a specific bona fide set aside. Oftentimes in large-scale procurement projects, there isn't an opportunity for small businesses that pay higher in insurance or have vendor pricing that's slightly higher because we don't have and benefit from economies of scale. This guarantees that we are able to compete against, in a fair and equitable way, against other contractors that have the same challenges. One of the things we cracked jokes on the mayor about was with, it was tough with the insurance laws regarding a car. Try insuring a semi-truck or an excavator in the city of Detroit and what those costs were. And so this allows companies that have those similar challenges for us to compete and participate in a fair, equitable way, and we're able to create jobs. One of the things we did is we looked at all the jobs that go into a single demolition. And what came out of it was consistently, whether it's a 900 square foot bungalow or a 4-family flat, there are going to be 14 jobs. And of those 14 jobs, 9 of those jobs on every demolition are extremely low barrier to entry. 4 of those jobs are medium barrier to entry, and only 1 job, which is the heavy equipment operator, is a high barrier to entry, rightfully so, because you're going to be demolishing structures next to someone's home or seniors walking or children. And so that should be a high barrier to entry. But this isn't something where a small few people are going to be able to participate. And so through many months of working together, as a motley crew as we were able to collect the voice and speak and say, if this isn't about the residents, if this isn't about creating access, we'll never get to doing large-scale infrastructure projects. We'll never solve the problems that have plagued through systemic racism and challenges that we face as a community if we don't start somewhere. We personally have benefited from that, and so I want to acknowledge everyone that's here, because it wasn't me. It was this collective group. We're equally as important, if not more. We've got Leon Petty from Go Green and City Abatement, who brought an environmental perspective and is one of the leading companies hiring Detroiters in environmental work, and not just in the city, but across the state. We've got Curtis Johnson from Inner City Contracting, who brought a different voice. And so we have Curtis here. We have Harley Brown from DMC Consultant. We're happy as heck to have Charles Bailey from Lake Star, who spoke to rehab and saying, hey, all the guys are doing demolition. We talk about that, but Charles was able to speak to the rehab work and making sure that the 8,000 properties that are going to be saved, to give us a perspective to make sure that voice, to make sure those jobs were heard. We have William Aaron from Emerging Industries Training Institute. He, along with Anthony Jackson, were able to bring perspective of what does pre-apprentice. I know they work with the carpenters and other unions like the ones we belong to, and operating engineers and 1191 laborers, and they work to make sure that those individuals are prepared and they can overcome those challenges. And not just that, the soft skills, making sure you're ready day one to be in a competitive, high quality work site, and you're prepared to be of value. And last but not least is Rod Rickman from Rickman Enterprise Group, who he, along with Harley, have been in this community doing this fight for a long period of time. And so that, and not just the guys here, we had many calls with contractors that aren't here today because they were busy working, but it was a collective the mayor spoke of over 20 contractors spoke at our presser on Monday and spoke about what this meant, not only for us as companies, but what this meant for everyday Detroiters like Lamar, from the carpenters, to have an opportunity to not just have a job, not just have a career, but have an opportunity to grow and one day have a business themselves. And so, I'll end that there. And I guess Scott Benson, Councilman Scott Benson of District 3, who's been a champion from the beginning for us on demolition.
Brian, thank you very much. So, as always, it's an honor and privilege to be here, but it's especially an honor because I get to talk about how we're going to be able to ask the residents of Detroit to invest $250 million into our neighborhoods. Now, as many of you know, this blight bond request was put before council last year, and it didn't pass. So we had the chance to go back, sharpen pencils, and come up with the new priorities for the program, and rehabilitation of our neighborhoods became that new priority. And so now we have the opportunity to come before the residents of Detroit, ask them to make that investment of $250 million. And I really wanted to say thank you to my constituents who came with me today. Those who've been pushing me to support and ensure that the 3rd District, the northeast side of Detroit, which didn't see much in the way of the hardest hit funds when it came to demolition, sees that type of investment this time, and we get a priority when it comes to seeing our neighborhood invested in. And so when I get to go back to Ms. Kazi or Ms. Leatherwood, who have been in their homes for 60 and 50 years respectively, and tell them that they may finally see the investment in homes being rehabbed in their neighborhoods, as well as homes being demolished, the eyesores and the blight that have been in their neighborhoods. When they tell me, Councilman, the smells, Councilman, the crime, Councilman, we need more jobs. So Proposal N will be a social justice, it will be an economic justice, as well as an environmental justice proposal that the voters will have the opportunity to talk about. And so when I have Ms. Griffin, who wanted to talk about this, just because in her neighborhood, blight is such an issue. And the 3rd District, the #1 call that we get is blight. I really wanted to make sure she had a chance to come and speak on this today. Ms. Griffin?
Thank you, Councilman Scott Benson, and I want to thank the Mayor Duggan for having me. My name is Ms. Griffin, and I live in District 3. And yes, the blight is awful. Every day I'm cleaning up, cutting grass, just making it safe for the children in my area. So I'm urging everyone to vote on Proposal N in this November ballot. We need it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. And so also have the opportunity to bring Mr. George Preston, who's been with me from the start. Even in November, when we weren't successful, Mr. Preston stood by me and said, hey, we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to work with the administration and come back with something that's going to work. And today we're successful. And so Mr. Preston was here earlier this week during a press conference, and now he gets a chance to be here as well again. And as a community leader, it is so important that we elevate these voices to make sure people understand why this is so important within our communities. And so Mr. Preston, who has some blight, he also has homes that will benefit from rehabilitation. And so it's really good to know that we have the strong backs and the dedication and the motivation to make that happen. So Mr. Preston, who is also the president of the Mohican Region Homeowners Association, also had a few words.
Thank you, Councilman Benson. Again, first of all, I just want to say once again, I do support Proposition N. And yesterday I had an opportunity to sit in on the council hearing where we heard a lot of people speak about Proposal N. And I heard the pros and the cons, but for the most part, there was a lot of support behind that proposal. So I did later hear that the council sat down and they had their hearing and discussion, and it was passed. So I'm happy to hear that it is going on the ballot. Now, again, I know that it's not perfect, and that was some of the things that people had to say about it. But nothing is perfect. But again, we can only solve one problem at a time. The whole thing. So with this, so we're going to be fine. I'm quite sure they're going to sit down and fine tune the things that that have been discussed. But the main thing is the fact that something is being done. We stopped talking now. Again, we're going into action. So again, I'm happy to hear that, because these vacant homes in our neighborhoods, all that blight, it's the eyesore in the neighborhood. They're crime havens, and also the health problems that they cause in the neighborhood. And ultimately, people get tired of looking at that in their neighborhood, and some of the people decide that I've just had it, so I'm moving because I don't want to live next to or watch this anymore. And when these things happen, now we've got another home that is open, and that is, so we don't get someone in there immediately, then we've got another eyesore in the neighborhood. So once again, I'm just happy to hear that now something is being done, and I'm excited that this is going to be going on the ballot. And once again, I just want to say I support Proposal N, and I hope everyone else does too. And I want to say thank you to Councilman Benson, his hard work, and thank you, Mayor Duggan.
And thank you, Mr. Preston. And it's, once again, I really do want to thank the demolition and construction and environmental industries for taking the lead, being the tip of the spear on this one, and making sure that we got to this point. This was a lot of disappointment last year, but now with that disappointment, now we have the victory that comes with it as well. So, and when we talk about jobs, and I also talked about the social justice issue, the environmental justice, there's also the economic justice issue. And so when residents of a city don't feel like they're participating, it's incumbent that leadership step up and make sure everybody feels that they can participate and have a say. And when a rising tide lifts all boats, we all have to be on those boats to be part of that. And so with those jobs, it's going with $250 million coming into play in the neighborhoods. You're going to have to hire some people. I'm not sure if the current teams have the capacity to take all that on, which means that they're going to have to be hiring and employing other Detroiters. And now when you talk about hiring people, and Stevie Wonder talked about it, they don't always hire colored folk. And so, but black businesses overwhelmingly hire black people. And the city is 80% black and a 33% poverty rate. We have to hire Detroiters, which means black Detroit has to work as well. And so when we talk about, yes, and I'll give that a second one. And so when we talk about the need to get people into the pipeline for jobs, you have to have people who are trained. And so Nicole Sherrard Freeman, who is the executive director of Detroit at Works, it's going to be her task to make sure that the 500 to 1,000 Detroiters that are going to be hired by the teams and the crews who are going to be doing the demolition and doing the rehab work, that they actually get to them trained and ready to go is going to be her task. I know she's up to the task, and she's helped train thousands of residents in the 3rd District with all the jobs that we've been able to create. And I know our now carpenter, when he talked about working at Flexingate, which is a big place in my heart, that was a big fight to make sure that we got that. And they had over 600 Detroiters working in that location at one time. And it's still an ongoing concern. So thank you for your hard work, and thank the carpenters for making that happen as well. But Nicole Sherrard Freeman is going to be the one that helps train everybody. Ms. Freeman, Sherrard Freeman.
Thank you, Councilmember Benson. I got to tell you, so this is the kind of day that we've dreamt about at Detroit at Work since the mayor restructured how workforce works in Detroit in 2015. So under the mayor's leadership and under the mayor's workforce development board, we've been working for the past 5 years to change how workforce works for Detroiters in this city. And so over the past 5 years, as we've restructured, we've brought some real attention to working with partners like EITI and others, and working with Brian McKinney and our construction and demo partners in this work. And between July of 2018 and March of 2020, Detroit at Work and its community-based organization partners and training providers trained more than 1,300 Detroiters for jobs in construction-related fields, demo. And of those 1,300, 1,100 got jobs. And they got jobs at an hourly rate of about $16.92 an hour, and that's okay. That's a fine place to start. But clearly, it's not enough. Clearly, we can't stop there. And so I'm excited to be here today with other leaders and partners in the city to talk about what we are going to do moving forward. So there are 2 ways that we can make this different as a result of the work that the partners here today are doing. The first is that we're going to make this different because Detroit at Work has proven to you that we can get Detroiters ready at scale and on time. We've done that for FCA. 500 impact zone residents have already interviewed for FCA jobs. That's 500 of the 3,500 that FCA is going to interview. And FCA has told us that Detroiters are ready. They are coming in prepared and on time and with energy and ready to work. And so we have proven that we've got a system in place that can get Detroiters ready. And then the second reason, the second way that we are going to make this different is what Councilmember Benson just said. The way we make this different for Detroiters is that we have companies that have a commitment to hiring Detroiters. It's different already because Brian and his partners are standing here today telling you that they are going to hire the folks we put through our systems. We are going to work together to build the curriculum and get folks ready, and they are going to hire them, and that is why it is different. And so the final question we have to ask ourselves is, as we gear up for all the work that's coming, specifically through Detroit at Work, who's going to pay for this? Because while Detroit at Work offers free training, we all know that nothing's free. And so I'm here to tell you that Detroit at Work with the mayor and with Conrad and with our other partners at the city, we're going to take the lead to be sure that we've got the money it takes to train the people that you need. And we're going to do that in 3 ways. We're going to use federal and state funding as long as it holds. We're going to ask our employer community to contribute because obviously they benefit when we train. And we're going to ask our philanthropic partners to come alongside us and help close the gap. And so we're going to do even better by Detroiters and for Detroiters. This time is going to be different.
And with that, I don't know if we've exhausted ML, but anybody else can ask questions as well. Nope, apparently we haven't.
Good to see everybody again. Yesterday, some members of City Council had said that they would like more time to examine this proposal. Why was it so important that this get approved yesterday rather than next week or some point in the future?
Give that to Councilman Benson.
So in this situation, you never know what the future is going to hold. And if you have the support at that point, we're going to be able to give the information and the education to hopefully get my colleagues comfortable from where we are. We also have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Jemison next week and talk about the companion resolution that will be coming, where we'll have more opportunity to talk about what the desires and needs are for the residents being represented by my colleagues. And so we'll have more opportunity to talk about the program.
And wouldn't you still have that opportunity and then take your vote after meeting with Mr. Jemison and getting some of that information that some of your colleagues said they still wanted to have before voting affirmatively?
And so once again, the future is guaranteed to no one. And so the opportunity presented itself, and so we took it. And we still have the opportunity. The vote wouldn't happen until November. So there's lots of time to have conversations and talk and work with our partners over in HRD and in PNDD to get what council wants to see in that closing resolution.
Okay. And what do you think the difference is between, or can you tell us what some of the key differences are that you see between the proposal that was approved yesterday and the proposal that council opposed, I guess it was last year?
Yeah. And number one, and this is what I said, the rehabilitation of homes. And so prioritizing the rehab of homes over demolition, and while I still support and have to have demolition in 3rd District, not every neighborhood or district is as hard hit by blight and the need for demolition. And so now you're able to say, hey, in addition to demolition, we're also going to rehab homes and rehab 8,000, which is a significant number, which also means that you're going to have new families. This expands our tax base. This brings people in, and it gives people an option, and it relieves the pressure when it comes to our need for affordable housing. And so we're now going to have a larger pool to support that and hopefully get more homeowners into the city of Detroit, which is something we need since we are predominantly now a renter city.
Okay. And the administration had made rehabbing homes, in addition to demo, a goal from the beginning of the demolition program, but it doesn't seem like that had the kind of results that would lead to 8,000 homes being preserved. What makes you think it'll be different this time?
Well, if you prioritize the 8,000 homes, if you crunch the numbers, those numbers work. We're able to put the resources into the homes that we need, and maybe Arthur Jemison can really get down to the numbers on that one.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mr. Elrick, could you just say your question one more time?
Yes,
Make
please.
sure I get it.
When the mayor had announced the demolition priority some years ago, one of the things he said is that we would also like to rehab homes whenever possible. But it seems far more homes were demolished than rehabilitated. Now to say there's 8,000 homes that we're going to try and save seems like a considerable shift and quite a high target. How will you accomplish that?
So the primary difference between, for example, hardest hit funds and what they were able to do, and the locally generated bond funds that are being discussed today is that while it was not involved in HHF, my understanding of those rules is that they did not allow the rehabilitation of those houses. They had to be used. The money had to be used for a list of things, one of which was demolition, but the list didn't include the kind of rehab that we're doing for a number of reasons. Those rules also required that we procure and buy demolition and related services in a different way than we are doing proposing to do now. So with these local funds, we're going to be able to procure and have this work done by Detroiters using all of the parts of the city's procurement ordinance and its regulations. But back to the rehab, it's our intent to do it. It's an eligible use of the bond proceeds, and so we have a lot more control over doing it. Even though we didn't have money to spend on rehab through HHF last time, we did invest in a number of rehab programs like Rehabbed and Ready, which have been very successful and frankly learned a lot about how to do it well and thoughtfully through that process.
And I think all of us have seen how quickly a salvageable house deteriorates. Have you identified 8,000 homes to rehabilitate, and what are the odds that they will still be salvageable if the bond is passed in November and we can get back to demolishing things, during the pandemic?
So you're highlighting an important point. Every year, about 1,000 houses go from being salvageable to being to going into the list of demos, that things that need to come down. But with the ability to preserve, we believe we're going to have a lot of success in moving these houses. I think when you combine a series of elements, I'll share them in a second, but when you start saying to yourself, these rehabilitations, these partial rehabilitations are going to meet the standard that a Detroit Land Bank house auction property would meet. They're going to be cleaned out, they're going to be secured, but they're also going to have, in many cases, a roof repair or other things that keep water from going inside, and then they're going to be put on the Detroit Land Bank auction site. That site is today generating between 200 and 250 sales a month, and we think, we don't have the quality product that we're going to have when the rehabilitations are done today. So you can imagine it's going to be a lot of demand for those improved properties. So we've got good reason to think we're going to be successful there. Further, we've got programs like Building Blocks, which helps us sell them to neighbors. We did one in Campo Banglatown in the 3rd District a few weeks ago, and not only do we move all of them houses, selling them, all the houses were acquired by people in the same zip code. So we have the capacity to do it, and we're gonna have success, we believe, with the rehab. Last question that you asked, to make sure I get it answered. We have identified, based on inspections done by the Land Bank, all of what we think the rehab candidates are, and all of what we think the demolition candidates are. I've got them all mapped out by addresses. So what I'm also excited about is the ability to go into our planning areas where we've been working, places like Russell Woods and Narden Park, where we need to get 500 vacant and abandoned houses either secured or down for that neighborhood to really reach its full potential. And after being in a number of meetings with residents saying, why can't we do this now? I get to finally say we get to do this work in partnership with planning work and in a way that drives forward a larger agenda than just demo or rehab, but commercial districts, open spaces, all the different things that our strategic neighborhoods are doing. We get to bring that approach to even more neighborhoods now because of this bond issuance, assuming the electorate approves it.
Okay, and when you say 8,000 homes being rehabbed, does that mean rehabbed by the city, or that the houses will be sold to somebody through the land bank auction and they'll rehab it? Will those count towards the 8,000, or is this actually the city itself will be restoring these to habitable condition?
So as I think we described a minute ago and has been described before, all 8,000 of these houses today have got trash and debris, on their property, inside the building. They're open to trespass and vacant. They also have water often coming in from different foundation through the roof. What we're going to be able to do is remove all of the trash and debris from the site and inside the house. We're then going to be able to secure the exterior with a product like the Secure View, other things that provide a clear view out of the house, but completely tighten up the envelope of the house. And then we're going to have, in many cases, repairs done on the roofs to keep water from coming in. So it's in that condition that the houses are going to be sold and then rehabilitated, probably by private parties. But that first, that first scope I described is a difference between an Own It Now house on the Land Bank website And it exceeds what's available on the auction part of it, where we've been able to move hundreds of houses a month. So we're really optimistic that this strategy is going to carry us forward. So part of it's going to be done privately, but we're going to do those first 3 scope items I mentioned.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And this next question may be for you, Mr. Jemison, or for the mayor, but can you update us on the status of demolitions in the city because of funding, pandemic, and if this is approved, when can we see some action after November?
Yeah, so we got about 21,000 down. There's about 500 under contract right now. I think most of the demolition contracts are held by the companies standing here today. But other than an occasional emergency demolition when a building is in danger of falling over, there's no more money for demolitions until this passes. If it does pass on November 3rd, literally within a matter of a few weeks, Luan Counts in the new Detroit department, we brought demolition back in from the land bank in-house. I think everybody here feels very good about the way it's being handled right now, but the demolition will start up again full speed within weeks of passage if the voters decide to authorize this.
And if this initiative is defeated, what happens then in terms of knocking down and rehabilitating houses in the city of Detroit?
It's basically a decision by the people of the city of Detroit that the condition of the neighborhood is something that they're willing to live with. But there is no other demolition money. We had built up some reserves, but COVID-19 just hit us with just huge reductions in the casino revenues and the income tax revenues and the like, and wiped out the reserve that we would have had. So the people of the city have a choice. If you think the quality of the neighborhoods is fine and this is okay long-term, then we don't need to do this. If you believe, as I believe, that we've raised enough generations of children in the city going by these blighted houses, and it's time to say to every child, you deserve to live in a blight-free neighborhood, I hope. They'll consider doing that, and it's a conversation we're going to have for the next 3 months.
Okay, and I have a question for the mayor and for Councilman Benson. Right now on city council, we have a member who is prepared to plead guilty to misconduct in office charges. He's been serving on council for a couple of years now under bribery charges. What should happen to Mr. Leland? What should he do, and what should the people of Detroit expect when they have a man who's under a cloud, who's being paid with city tax money, and who's voting on very important issues like this bond proposal?
And so I have not, you're telling me he's prepared to plead guilty. I have not heard that, but I believe the same thing I believe, no matter whether it's a state legislator, a city councilman, somebody in Congress, is that people are innocent until proven guilty. And if and when any individual is convicted, they should be out immediately, and until then, they're entitled to the justice system, and that's what I said 2 years ago when the original indictment has come down, and that's been my position. Every single public official I've ever known who's been under suspicion is, I think, they're entitled to be innocent until proven guilty. I don't know, Councilman, if you feel any differently than that.
Please.
So, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, and I concur. And so the United States Constitution has us operate under a presumption of innocence. The 5th and 14th Amendment, if I'm not mistaken, provide that. And so Mr. Leland is my colleague. I will continue to support him. He continues to support the residents of Detroit and his constituents. And so until that time, and I'm not going to speculate on his future, and I've not heard what you're describing today either.
Okay, yeah, his lawyer told us last Friday that he's planning to plead guilty, and this will resolve his situation. But that's my last question. Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions? Okay, I've got one here from Channel 7 asking me to comment on the recent violence that we've seen in the city, and I think Chief Craig addressed it in detail the other day. We're seeing it, and I'm talking to my fellow mayors across America. There's something about what's been going on in the protests that have, across this country, that have emboldened people with guns in a lot of cities. What we have going for us in Detroit is the Detroit police. They're stretched thin by covering the protests and the neighborhoods, but they are out every day making arrests. I don't know that we've seen a time that we have this many people carrying guns, in most cases illegally. If there's one encouraging thing that we've seen, and the chief will be out relatively soon with a plan that'll involve a lot of different police agencies, and Warren Evans and Prosecutor Worthy and Sheriff Napoleon and the U.S. Attorney Matthew Schneider and a number of others have all been working on this. But Chief Craig tells me we are seeing something we haven't seen before, which is people are calling up very quickly and providing information. That I think we may be at a point where people have had enough of this violence, but the chief tells me that on the recent shooting at the Coney Island, where 3 individuals were killed and the 4th was badly shot, that within an hour or 2 of the shooting, they had a phone call who told them exactly who it was and why. Within a matter of hours, that person was under arrest. If we can get that kind of response, I think we can turn the tide. And I'll let Chief Craig talk about it in detail, but I've confidence in the Detroit Police Department will respond, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need the prosecutors, we need the U.S. Attorney, we need the sheriff, we need the county executive, and everybody right now, I think, is coming together.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, just to follow up on that, have you heard any more from the White House or anyone in Washington about the possibility that federal law enforcement will be sent to Detroit? And can you reiterate for people what your position is on that?
Yeah, so I talked to a number of federal officials yesterday, as did Chief Craig, and we are getting no indication there will be any Department of Homeland Security people coming to the city of Detroit. And certainly, the chief and I have made it very clear that sending in folks from the Department of Homeland Security to deal with protesters, we did not even accept the National Guard at the height of the protest. We made a decision early on that the bond between the Detroit Police Department and this community was strong enough that we could handle the protests ourselves. And I think so far, and we get up every day and we work it hard. We haven't had any stores looted. We haven't had any fires started. We're continuing to see protests that are predominantly outside the city. And we are continuing to see Detroiters stand up in a very vocal way saying, you're not going to tear up our town. That's been our strategy, and we're going to stick with that strategy. Now, if you want to talk about extra gun prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office or ATF taking illegal guns off the street, we would support that kind of help. But we've made it very clear that Department of Homeland Security people coming to town to deal with the protesters is not going to be acceptable, and my indications are we do not expect to see that here in Detroit.
And do you have any authority or ability to refuse or resist them if they are sent?
Again, I don't want to get into that because the indications we have right now is based on our conversations. I don't expect that to happen. If it does happen, the chief and I will deal with it at the time, but we're being told that the reports are not true, that there is no plan to send Department of Homeland Security folks to the city of Detroit to deal with protesters.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all very much.